So, good morning. I am so glad to see folks coming and joining this conversation. It's an important one, and so thank you for taking time out of your Super Bowl Sunday to join this virtual forum. My name is Barbara Graves-Poller. I'm the chair of the Ulster County Democratic Committee, and I am here with Brandon Gonzalez. Brandon, do you just want to unmute and say who you are?
Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon Gonzalez. I am the Vice Chair of Campaign Support for the Ulster County Democratic Committee. Happy to be here.
Thanks. And so I just want to say two quick words about why we're here, how we're going to proceed, and then quickly move on to actually hearing from our candidates. So we are here because we understand the importance of these roles that will be the subject of our UCDC endorsement at the upcoming convention. And we want to talk to the folks who are seeking the endorsement and make sure that our voters are not low information voters, but have detailed information about in advance of making their endorsement votes. So thank you again. This today we are, live and direct with our folks, but we are also going to make this Zoom link available, the recording available after today in its entirety on our intranet site, and that will stay up for all voting members until after the convention. After the convention, we are going to take down the complete video and just cut down to what we're calling the closing argument, 2-minute statements by our candidates who have received the endorsement. And then at that point, the condensed version will appear on our website. And so before I turn over to Brandon, I just want to say two things in addition. One is that there will not be an open Q&A session at the end of today. Brandon put out a call for questions, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, and we have received and discussed feedback that we've gotten from our executive committee and chairs. And so we've synthesized information into questions that we think summarize these key issues. And then we actively encourage everyone to continue talking to candidates and to review information that they shared today. And my final point, since I have a captive audience here, I want to let you all know that we are still searching for a few additional volunteers for the convention. It is happening, as you know, on the 16th. Beginning at 1, we'll need a few extra hands available to help with setup and then cleaning up at the end. So please consider volunteering some of your time. All right, that's enough for me. I'd like to turn it over to Brandon to say a few more words about how we are going to proceed.
Thank you, Barbara. So I'll give a brief overview for the format for tonight's forum or today's forum. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. We will alternate who answers first for each question to ensure fairness, and the forum should last approximately 90 minutes, God willing, and we will conclude with closing remarks from our contested candidates. We ask that everyone maintain civility and respect during this forum, and again, as Barbara said, a recording for this will be made available afterwards. So let's begin with our first question, and that would be for our unopposed candidate for County Comptroller, March Gallagher. March, every elected official plays a role in ensuring stability for our county, especially in these uncertain times. The challenges ahead, how do you see your role as Comptroller in protecting Ulster County from the broader national instability we face? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I want to thank the committee for this chance to speak to you, and also just for all your hard work, because amazing work was done in the last cycle to ensure that we have blue representation in Congress, and that is so powerful and meaningful. So I want to speak directly to the question, and through that I'm going to circle back to some of the work that the Comptroller does, because I think it's a hard position to explain to people, but I anticipate that we're going to see really tough times ahead. We are seeing threats from the Trump administration to cut off funding in a myriad of programs. And in anticipation of that, my office, we published a federal funds impact report in late November. So you can take a look at that on our website. And we were able to identify, yes, Ulster County only receives about $50 million of money that we spend. That's federal money a year. But $2.4 billion a year comes into Ulster County to support Ulster County residents and programs. That is Social Security, $998 million. Medicare, Medicaid, both over $600 million each. So having the numbers is going to be critically important for our policymakers to be able to articulate what the needs are here and to be able to track and see how it's impacting us. That's not just county policymakers, certainly our county executive and our legislative body, but also our federally elected officials, our local town, village, school district, school board, and regular citizens to be able to articulate what is happening and to be able to identify what is happening. In addition to that, I think that the Trump administration plans for the overall economy are going to be very damaging to the US economy.
15 seconds.
We are going to be able to track things like sales tax and look at those issues to see how it impacts us. The Great Recession saw a sales tax drop of 8%. That would be devastating for the county. Thank you.
Thank you, March. I appreciate your time and your response. We're going to move it over to the county clerk segment now. The county clerk impacts daily life, and this race will shape our future. We will start with Taylor for the first question and go to Alex second. So Taylor, for you, much like the previous question to Comptroller Gallagher, I want to begin by asking, how do you see the role of county clerk in ensuring stability and continuity for Ulster County during these times of uncertainty? You have 2 minutes.
Sure. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me. Obviously, the incoming administration, there's a lot of unknowns, and I think the way that the county clerk could ensure stability and continuity is by ensuring that at the local level, at least, that the federal government is following the laws here in New York State. I've met with a number of folks about like the potential of an ICE raid at DMV, for example, given the green light law in New York that allows undocumented migrants to get driver's licenses and permits, and they need to have a court order or a warrant that lists the specific individual that they're looking for. They cannot come in with a blanket warrant looking for any undocumented folks. It has to be specific. So knowing the laws is important, and ensuring that they're following the laws. Most of what we do at the clerk's office is state level. Really, the only federal level items that we deal with are passports. And regarding passports, it's already kind of a nightmare. They've removed the ability to utilize the X gender marker on applicants who are non-binary. So I did send a letter to the Secretary of State last week, hoping to just give some sort of feedback that it's not working. It's not relevant to the document itself or our office. So sort of building a coalition of county clerks, not just statewide, but countywide, to really push back on some of these things, I feel is very important. It's going to take more than just one elected official to make any change. And I feel what we can do immediately is make noise, speak out, not be quiet and just kind of shrug our shoulders and roll with the punches, but fight back. And that's what I would plan on doing and am doing as acting county clerk currently.
Thank you, Taylor. Alex, same question.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's definitely all about the stability and continuity of government, and for sure, making sure the office of the clerk, follows New York state law. Our Constitution in the state of New York has the ERA in it. It has things like clean slate. It has protections for literally all people here. So not only following the New York state law, but promoting it too. I've also been attending a few ICE trainings, know your rights trainings, and learned that if you set aside like different spaces that are marked, private or personnel only and stuff, that's a way to also protect your own workers. So looking into different ways to protect people in different spaces that the clerk, operates in. And that's why, I would also work to expand services and bring them directly to people. And as clerk, I would hold office hours personally all across, our community and, our 68 hamlets, 20 towns and 3 villages in the city of Kingston, in these spaces, so that people aren't necessarily, especially marginalized, immigrants and trans plus individuals aren't, continuing to feel like they have to come into a kind of, admittedly scary space, right? So bringing more services directly to people, issuing an annual report, continuing to work with the organizations that address these issues for our most marginalized community members, like Immigrant Defense Network, operating in spaces that make people comfortable, such as the LGBTQ Center in Kingston, and yeah, all of that. So I think I'll leave it there.
Awesome. Thank you both for your answer. Next question. We'll start with Alex on this one. The county clerk's office often sees peaks in demand, especially during election seasons or times of crisis, such as natural disasters. What strategies do you plan on implementing to ensure that services remain accessible and efficient during these high demand periods?
Yeah, so I'm no stranger to being in a leadership position during emergencies, right? During COVID-19 here in the Village of New Paltz, in my current role as a trustee, my second term, I took on the role of pandemic information officer in the evenings throughout that crisis, and was in charge of our running, document for the crisis. So I'm pretty good at, the chains of command and all of that for emergencies. And this is where actually my idea for homebound services of the Office of the Clerk comes into play, I think. We saw in COVID that was actually a big need for vaccines, and our Department of Health was able to do that. So as clerk, one thing I would do is partner with other agencies within our county, such as Office of the Aging, RCAL, and stuff like that, to be able to bring services directly to people to kind of, maintain functioning and whatnot. Definitely, we need to be looking into PPE and whatnot a little bit more proactively right now. I know that's on my to-do list here in the village right now too. Just making sure that we always center the fact that the Office of the Clerk is a service provider first and foremost.
Great. Taylor, same question.
Sure, I think this question's really about accessibility, and for me, the best way to increase accessibility is to allow more transactions to happen remotely. Having to not come to a physical office at all, in my opinion, is the best case scenario, so that if there is some kind of emergency, you can do everything from home. So what we're doing is trying to increase the amount of transactions that can be done online. Currently, we can't even accept online transactions at the clerk's office. So we're working through that right now to make sure that folks will be able to do that. You can get all your documents online now. We just finished an enormous digitization project, over 1 million scanned images to get all of the deeds and mortgages going back to the 1660s online. So if you're looking for a copy of one of those, you don't have to come in anymore. But of course, expanding where the DMV mobile unit goes, that has been a priority of mine, and increasing hours would be helpful in case of an emergency or something, I believe. But again, just making it so that people don't have to go anywhere is hugely, hugely important for that. And in terms of records management, we've done a lot of work to ensure that the record center is disaster proof. We essentially built a building within a building over on Foxhall Avenue so that any type of natural disaster or unnatural disaster, like God forbid a war or something, it's really one of the most secure sites in the entire county, because there's no replacement for the physical documents. So when I was archivist and deputy county clerk, we did a lot of work to ensure that that was a
15
stable and
seconds.
extremely safe location. So yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Final question for this segment. We've heard both campaigns mention plan to improve DMV operations, but the clerk's office has many other functions as well, such as property transfers and court-related filings. Can you each speak to how you plan to improve service related to property transfers, court filings, and other aspects to the clerk's office that impact Ulster County residents? Taylor, have you go first.
Sure. Only 2 minutes for this one. Wow. So The biggest thing that we're doing regarding court records is e-filing. So currently we can e-file civil court records, which is great. And again, it prevents a lot of physical paper. It's more sustainable, it's cheaper, it's easier for people. We're working with the state right now to implement e-filing of criminal cases. They're a lot more complicated. There's a lot more agencies involved, but there's currently a pilot program being put on by the state, and we're pushing for Ulster County to be one of those pilot counties that test this out and try to make that work. Regarding the land filings and everything, what we're doing really to try to make things easier is work with the state and let our state representatives know when things are and are not working. There's a number of new land transactions that just went into effect this year. Just one example is the transfer on death deed, the Todd deed. Basically says that when somebody dies, the property is transferred to another person, but there is nothing in the law itself that tells them they have to tell the clerk's office when that person dies. And it's a huge issue because we're going to have all these properties being transferred and nobody's going to know that they were transferred. So it's really an administrative push with our state representatives to make those things easier. But again, the more e-filing that can be done, in my opinion, the easier it is for everybody. It's easier for our staff. It's easier for the folks filing it, and it's more sustainable. A huge priority of mine is reducing the amount of paper that is coming in and going out of the clerk's office. We can really do a better job of
15
keeping
seconds.
these digital records and reducing our carbon footprint, frankly. Thank you.
Thank you. No, that was a lot to pack into a 2-minute question, so I apologize for that. Alex, same question.
Awesome. So yeah, imagine, so talk just one thing about the DMV. So imagine if, the DMV were also a little bit more holistic, and like the mobile DMV in its accessibility to all, like resulting in constituents like learning exactly what services the county can provide. We can easily make a contact booklet, right? Kind of like the county legislature has. So that's one more DMV thing. But other things I would focus on if elected clerk, imagine if public data were more so open data, and if the clerk's office had, somebody kind of in a digital archive role, right? Director of Digital Democracy, to really help everybody in the county understand how and what that means. And, really helping, as we digitize more things, we need to also be kind of leading in bringing everybody in the county in on how to, access all of that information that's digitized. Another thing the clerk does, so my brother is in the Navy, so this is like always kind of my thing with veterans. So the clerk's office has this awesome program called Favor, which is a discount program for veterans. And so, looking at the list of businesses and stuff, it's pretty robust, but I would prioritize also, really working with our commanders, like my friend Andy here in New Paltz, at our VFWs and American Legions, to really expand this Favor program and make sure that every veteran in our county knows about it, is enrolled, make it easier, hold office hours at these VFWs, American Legions, and get more businesses, especially in the outskirts of the county,
15 seconds.
involved. So I'll leave it right there.
Great, thank you, Alex. And thank you both for your responses. Let's move on to the closing statements. Alex, I'll have you go first.
So thanks again for hosting this forum. I've been looking forward to an opportunity to actually address something directly. Claims that have been circulating about me since last May, both internally and in the local press. And democracy depends upon truth being told. That's a big part of the clerk's office. Good leaders look trouble directly in the eye. And so I want to be clear that if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's fine. But if you do, I never wrote or said any of the anti-Semitic or racist terms or phrases that some have claimed. I've never been convicted, found guilty of any hate crimes, and I've never been censured by UCDC or anyone else. I have, however, been working tirelessly to address these concerns raised by my local synagogue after sharing statements by SUNY New Paltz student organizations and departments, including the second oldest Black Studies department in the country. Statements that my constituents made in response to 5% of my village population being arrested one night for exercising their First Amendment rights to peacefully protest the American war machine. In hindsight, I should have made it clear that these statements were my constituents' perspectives and not my own. And I remain incredibly regretful for the whole situation and the turmoil that it's caused. And so with anti-Semitism, white supremacy, misogyny, transphobia, homophobia, and other forms of bigotry and hatred on the rise and getting a pass from Trump and his administration, it's more important than ever that we elect a county clerk who has a plan for actively dismantling these systems of oppression that serve as barriers to the vital services and resources of the office of the clerk. I have that plan, I have that vision, I have the policy chops, past experiences, both lived and professional, and a big love for Ulster County, for all of you, to get this utopic office that, you know, I've been describing so far in this campaign trail off the ground on day one, and ensure that the positive strides made under my leadership transcend any one person or party. So just want to thank you all sincerely for considering supporting me at our convention. I look forward to the opportunity to be the Ulster County clerk who works for everyone, the clerk who works for you, and my lines are always open. I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thanks, Alex. Taylor, closing statement?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you everyone again for having us. This is very fun. Yeah, I've been in the clerk's office now for 8 years, started as archivist managing all of the historic records. And here in Ulster County, we really have, I believe, some of the more historic records in the entire country. And the primary function of the clerk is the keeper of the records. And we've been trying to really change that and switch that into the sharer of the records. Historically, a lot of clerks' offices have been pretty gatekeepy about their records, but we've done a lot of work to bring out stories of traditionally marginalized groups. We've done a lot of work on Black history, Indigenous history, women's history, and I would really be honored to be able to continue to do that job. I love the office. It is my career. And I just hope that you would all consider supporting me at the convention. If you have any questions or anything, I think you all have my contact. I'd be happy to chat more about it and come visit. We're on the first and second floor of the county building. Thank you all.
Thank you both for your responses and for sharing your vision today for the county clerk's office. We appreciate your time and your answers. We'll now move on to family court judge, and I'll pass it back to Barbara, who will lead this segment.
Hi, so I have 3 questions that are a bit dense, so I will try to read them slowly, and then we'll vary our responses, who is going to lead each set of responses, and I'll just point that out each time. So let's just start with number 1. Family court procedures, by necessity, differ from those that restrict hearsay and limit some other kinds of evidence that are commonly admitted in civil proceedings. This makes sense, given the kinds of issues that court addresses, but it also puts more pressure on family court to be fair, equitable, and right. What skills and experience will you bring to the bench to meet that challenge? Let's start with Laura.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, so I bring with me a lot of past experience. I bring with me prior judgeship experience and extensive mediation experience. I've been doing the job of a family court judge from the sidelines for over 3 years. I work very closely with Judge Rakoff. I'm involved in her decision making on a daily basis. I sit in on her appearances and I conference her cases. And at these conferences, I represent her, I represent the court, and I have to find middle grounds. I work with parties to find fair resolutions of cases while I take into consideration all sides, including the voice of the child that's given through me through the assigned attorney for the child. Um, I have also had the opportunity to work with all 3 judges in the family court and also visiting judges from multiple counties. And I have learned so much from all of them. I intend to take everything they've taught me and take that wealth of knowledge to mold my own positive impact in the courtroom and to continue to bring positive change to the Ulster County Family Court.
Okay, same question. If you need me to repeat it again, I can, but let's go to Renee. Sorry, you're muted, Renee.
Sorry about that. So yes, in some family court proceedings, there are hearsay exceptions, and those exceptions apply only in specific proceedings. They are for allegations of abuse or neglect, and they must be corroborated by some other evidence. In determining whether to let them in, we have to first do an analysis of, is this actually hearsay? There are a lot of things that are not hearsay, but may seem like hearsay at first blush. And in any kind of proceeding, you'd be surprised at how much is actually not hearsay from an evidentiary standpoint. So that would be the first step. And then the second step would be to narrow it to make sure that it is the kind of exception that is allowed. Is it a hearsay from the child about abuse or neglect? And if it is, that has to be corroborated by some other evidence. So this gets a little tricky in practice because sometimes you say to the attorney, or the attorney would argue, well, we're going to corroborate that, but later sometimes it doesn't. So I think it's important to be able to go back to the record and say, all right, I allowed this hearsay in, but it was never later corroborated. So I'm specifically striking that from the record. I'm not going to consider that in my decision. So that's one thing. The other thing is to use common sense. You know, we know from speaking to children that certain things are, you know, not reliable with children in terms of their perception and their understanding of like the meanings of words. You might interview a child and they might say something happened yesterday, and then you ask them, well, was that before or after Christmas? And they might come back and say, oh, it was after Christmas, or it was before Christmas. So clearly it could not have been when they said it was. So, you know, you have to look at including the entire context of the case. You know, where does that hearsay fit in? There are some cases that rely solely on hearsay for a decision, but, you know, we want to try to limit those and look at the whole case.
Thank you. And Deanna?
So interestingly, I actually have presented at conference regarding corroboration of child's out of court statements pertaining to abuse or neglect, because that is a big area where there is a hearsay exception. So I am very familiar with it. The evidentiary rules do carve out an exception for statements made of the children pertaining to abuse or neglect, and they do come in family court proceedings, but they need to be corroborated by some other evidence. So in a family court proceeding, that would be what we'd be looking for. We'd be looking for the corroboration, which is basically what other evidence is out there that would tend to show that the statements made are true or are false. In terms of my experience at DSS, unfortunately, this comes up very, very often in sex abuse cases, where these things happen in privacy, they happen in secrecy, and it's very hard to get further evidence. So there's things you have to look at there. I have a lot of experience working with caseworkers who have been qualified to forensically interview children, which is a special training they have in terms of not engaging in leading questions in talking to children about statements of abuse or neglect. You want to look at the age of the child to see if they're giving you statements that are beyond their emotional knowledge, sexual knowledge, things of that nature. And also, you know, if there's other children in the home, if they're repeating the same thing that the first child has said, and in separate interviews, I would want to look for that to see what the children say. And also,
15 seconds.
If the children are just repeating things over and over again in a rote way, that may indicate leading by an adult in the home, which unfortunately sometimes happens. So those are the things I would look for in terms of cooperation and how to deal with that and be fair and equitable to the parties.
Okay, thank you. Going to our second question. I'm sure all three of our family court nominee candidates know that the Second Department recently issued a landmark ruling explaining how family court Article 10 proceedings, and here I'm quoting, serve in part to enact procedures in preventing unwarranted state intervention in family life. How, if at all, have you witnessed unjustified intrusions into family life in family court? And what steps would you take, if elected, to address those intrusions? Let's start with Renee. Sorry, you're muted.
I keep hitting my keyboard, sorry. So the state has an interest, obviously a compelling one, in protecting children, which is what gives them a great amount of latitude to come into the home when there is a complaint of child maltreatment. I think one thing that definitely can happen and that I would like to see happen, and I advocate for when I have the opportunity, is, if you have an abuse or neglect proceeding and there's maybe the allegations are mental health or a messy home. One thing that you might do is when you resolve the case, the order should be really narrowly tailored to address those concerns. Instead of we get these orders that are a laundry list of everything under the sun, including drug and alcohol evaluations for the children, if applicable. And, we get these intense orders that really go way beyond the scope of addressing the issue that originally brought the matter into the court to begin with. So that is certainly an area that I think should be cleaned up. The other thing is, really wanting not to penalize people for when they do choose to work with the department to try to get help and address issues before they get to court. Unfortunately, I think what happens is people go to the department seeking help, and then sometimes they say things and they end up on the other side of a neglect proceeding. And I think that really, when people are making good faith effort to do that, we should not, we should do what we can to ensure that they don't end up, losing their children, especially, or being punished for that, for seeking help when they need it. I think, we need to be very cognizant about domestic violence and the impact of domestic violence on a caregiver and their ability to make decisions, and understand that they are frequently, acting under duress from their abusers. So is that abuse? Is that neglect?
That's time.
But yeah, I think a big step could be in narrowing the dispositional orders that we have to make sure they address the actual problems that brought the people
So
into.
that's at time, and I just want to be fair in keeping time. I don't know if we were able to see Brandon raising the time
I'm
sheet.
sorry, I didn't.
No, it's
I
okay.
can be louder.
So let's go to Deanna, same question. Do you need me to read the question again?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
So for me, this is a lot of what I do all day, is address these cases where DSS is seeking to come into family court. And there is court oversight. The Department of Social Services, if they're going to come in and ask for a child to be removed from the home, we have to present certain things to the court. The court has to make certain findings. One of those things the child is at imminent risk of harm if they remain in the home. The second thing is that the department has to show that they engaged in reasonable efforts to prevent the removal. So if there was things that DSS had tried before it gets into the court, we present all that evidence. It is not uncommon for DSS to work with a family for sometimes years. I have a case right now. I recently filed a neglect petition, and I have information going back to 2015. So we worked with the family for 10 years before we went and filed in family court. So there is a lot to go into it. And being behind the scenes at DSS, I know that we do consider a bunch of different things before we decide to go into court and seek a removal. I do agree with Renee that some of the dispositional orders could be narrowly tailored. And I think that some members of the 18B panel have been very good at advocating that on behalf of their clients. And I have counseled my client that you can't just come in and ask for whatever you want, and we really have to address what the issue is for the family. And just finally, I will note that each family is unique, so you got to take them as you find them. There's going to be considerations that might vary from
15
family to
seconds.
family. I think that's all, though. Thank you.
Okay, and Laura?
Yes,
minute.
thank you. Thank you. So, unwarranted intervention into the family life is a really important issue. And I think it starts right from the courtroom. Judge Rakoff, almost every case talks about how important it is for parents to come to resolutions on their own and not have to move forward with trials and go through that emotional upheaval and have their everyday life recorded. So mediation is so important, and it comes into play from the beginning with this issue. And of course, if a case goes further, the court limits who can get and who can see certain kinds of reports, including CPS reports, also mental health evaluation reports, supervised vision reports and evaluations. So they're limited in order to try to keep the family's privacy intact. Um, Also, a lot of the court proceedings are recorded, and we limit as to who can come in and listen to those court recordings. And that's another way to limit the invasion on the family. Um, Also, I think that another interesting issue to achieve this would be to put more of the onus on the parents. The first way I talked about it was to try to get parents to think more about middle grounds and coming to settlements on their own. But also, another example would be a parent facing neglect charges and having drug issues. Family court offers drug court, and parents have the opportunity to take responsibility for their actions and work through their issues and go to monthly meetings in drug court, which turn
15
into
seconds.
usually weekly meetings, and they achieve positive results on their own, and it creates such a much more fair and just a more fair and compassionate outcome in cases when parents have more of the responsibility on their themselves to alleviate the issues in their family and what has happened to their child or children.
Okay, thank you. And before asking this next question, I would just encourage everyone who here might be feeling like this is going very quickly and going very granular to look back after today's discussion at some of the responses, which I think are providing a lot of very useful insight into what actually happens in the family court, and then use that for additional follow-up, either one-on-one with candidates or through your respective committees. I say that also as a way to apologize for the length and complexity of the next question. And we're going to start with Deanna, and then Laura, and then Renee, so that's the order. And much like the final question with our clerk candidates, we tried to compile a lot of ideas into one, so here goes. Candidates, I'm going to identify 3 sensitive issues of importance to our voters and ask you to describe how you will promote justice and equity, notwithstanding these challenges. You can pick one and focus on that for your answer, or if within the time allotted, you would like to address more than one, you may do so. So the first one. Although New York has radically changed its approach to cannabis in recent years, family courts have been somewhat slow to revise their approaches to evidence of marijuana use. Item number 2. Recent reports on family court show persistent racial disproportionality in the child welfare system, including in Ulster County. Item number 3. During the first Trump administration, Republicans seized upon special immigrant juvenile status proceedings. This is an immigration issue that affects undocumented young people that is often addressed in family court. So again, the 3 items: 1, changes to cannabis; 2, racial disproportionality; 3, special immigrant juvenile status. You can pick one or more, and let's start with Deanna, please.
So I do want to start with the cannabis. The view of cannabis has changed significantly over the years. There is a presumption that a child is neglected where a parent engages in regular and continuous use of an illegal substance or a substance not prescribed to them that would regularly induce in the user thereof a state of intoxication, stupor. There might have been 3 other adjectives there. But we have moved away from cannabis being part of that. So if cannabis use is happening, I would want to see what the actual harm is to the child or the imminent risk based solely on the cannabis use and not just a presumption that might exist in the law. In regards to the SIDGE proceedings with the minors, We have had to deal with a lot of these in family court. It's been a struggle for us. A lot of times it's finding birth certificates, finding out who the birth parents actually are, because a lot of times these children's birth their parents are in countries where it's not easy to just get a hold of them. So we've had to find unique ways to actually get them in contact with people back in their home countries. So there's a lot of stuff you have to consider there in terms of how to involve their families, because their families aren't here. They might be in it somewhere else. In regards to racial disproportionality, it's been addressed significantly at the Department of Social Services. There is what's called blind meetings, where when we are addressing a case, we do not get the family names or any identifying characteristics. So we try to make the determinations there based solely on the facts. And I would try to do the same as a judge, which would be to just look at the facts and not the family composition, and go from there. So those are just, I think I'm at my 15-second mark, so I'm just going to stop there.
Thank you. And so let's turn over to Laura. Same, you can pick one and go in depth, or try to cover as more than one if you so desire.
Okay, thank you. I'll start with racial inequality in family court. And I think as a judge, you need to, it should start with yourself. Diversity for me actually starts in my own home. My husband is Hispanic, and we have a blended family, and we have a lot of different issues that I can take into consideration when I approach a case. If I did become a family court judge, I would have a woman of color as my law clerk, and I would love to have her perspective involved in my everyday cases and decisions. As a judge, I think you need to consider social, economic, and cultural issues in all your cases. You need to identify them quickly and try to see how that affects a case, and if a case needs specific services, and how you can incorporate that into the case moving forward. It could also mean that you might need to have interpreter services come into play very quickly. You need to catch on to that. Actually, at family court, we now have a full-time court interpreter. That has been such a huge improvement in our everyday procedure and system. And I know there's been reports on the court system and diversity and dehumanization. And as a judge, you need to keep that extremely firsthand in your mind and approach each case. Let people know that they're comfortable in your courtroom. You're going to think about their very different and unique situation in all cases, and let them feel comfortable and respected and heard. As far as the immigration issues, we don't ask, family court does not ask for any
15
documentation
seconds.
of immigration status. And so as of right now, that hasn't changed. That would have to come down on a state level. And we do handle guardianships where a family member can apply for guardianship of a child that's from another country, if they can show that it's a hardship for that child to go back to that country, and they have a safe and option to stay in the United States with the person that's applying for guardianship.
Oh, thank you. And Renee?
Yes, if you could just repeat the one issue was racism, one was immigration. What was the third one?
Sure. So the first, cannabis,
Can-
racial disproportionality, and special immigrant juvenile status.
Okay. With respect to the issue of cannabis, actually, when I was practicing in Delaware County before moving to Ulster County, I represented a woman who had been, marijuana use was a big crux of the neglect petition against her. At the family court level, we lost. I represent her on appeal, and that was actually that was reversed. And the appellate court said that there was no neglect. One of the things I argued in that case was that if we were talking about alcohol use, probably wouldn't be there. I think it's important, for a judge to keep in their mind the reality about marijuana. The fact that it may stay in the blood or in a blood test for 30 days or longer. And so, there's no way to know when the use was necessarily. So I think, as Deanna correctly said, we need to focus on, is there an impact on the child beyond, the parent is using, and there's this presumption you need to have some kind of connection. It needs to be, you know, it needs to be connected. So certainly that is something I feel very strongly about and have for a long time, is that, you know, marijuana should not be put on the same level as a lot of other substances are. In fact, I think alcohol is oftentimes much more dangerous. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. As far as racism and disparity in family court outcomes, this is absolutely something that happens. And I do agree that, you know, there have been some improvements, but there is a long way to go. One thing I think is important is to recognize not only what we do in the courtroom, but when somebody comes in to a case, comes into the courtroom, maybe they have experienced racism in the past. We need to be cognizant of these systems, these agencies, the criminal justice system, and how that has impacted
10 seconds.
people of color and put them in the position where they are more likely to be impoverished, which is really where we get to for being, you know, that they might have a neglect against them to begin with.
Thank you. And so just as with our clerk candidates, we'd like to give each of our family court candidates 2 minutes to share their final statement with all of you today. Let's start with Deanna.
So in preparing for today's proceeding, we were kind of, I think, charged with looking at what our vision would be for family court. So I've identified 3 things that I would want to see the incoming judge work on and aim for. One would be timeliness in the family court process. Oftentimes, cases can drag on for months, sometimes into a year or more, and that might have some adverse um, outcomes for families who need an answer when they can't handle it on their own. They can't come to a resolution. One would be fairness. I think that we just addressed that a lot in the last topic that we just had talked about, and how each of us would handle that in family court. And the final thing is to be attuned to the unique needs of the families that come before us. A lot of them are not going to be from the same background that we have. They may, me personally, they may not, there might be cultural differences, there might be issues of poverty that I haven't had to struggle with. So you're going to need to know all that. And I feel that working in the family court day to day gives you a lot of experience in that. And I can say that the stuff that you learn in the hallways often is very telling, because the parties act different in the courtroom than they do outside the courtroom. And I would like the person who is ultimately elected as judge to have experienced that, because it is a little telling, and it's something that I think is good to keep in mind. But all those 3 things, I think I'm looking for a good combination of those in terms of how the court experience would be for people. And so that's what I would aim to do, is work on those 3 things. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura.
Hi, thank you. So in conclusion, if I became a family court judge, I would want to break down that negativity that is associated with family court. And I think we can all agree that there is a certain effect on negativity on family court. I think it starts by making people feel heard, have a voice, and feel comfortable. And everyone should be respected in the courtroom. I love talking to people, listening to people, and I feel like my temperament allows people to feel comfortable and to feel heard and respected. As a judge, you also should be part of somebody's community, and each person should feel like that. If there's community events, it's very important for a judge to take part in them and make people know that they care about the community that they live in, and that it's very important to the judge. We already talked a little bit about diversity, and it is extremely important as a judge to consider social, economic, and cultural issues in every case from the beginning, and be able to see through certain things and know if you need certain services right away that can be implemented. Why me as a judge? I've been in Ulster County my whole life. I have prior judgeship experience. I have extensive mediation experience, which I feel is a huge plus in especially a family court setting when we're dealing with very intense and personal issues that could come to a resolution if everybody works together. Um, I've been doing the job of a judge from the sidelines for over 3 years, helping her with her decisions, sitting in on her conferences, representing her in conferences. And I know the staff, I know the judges. I've learned so much from all the judges and the visiting judges. I have a wealth of information inside of me, and bringing those positive impacts into the courtroom. It would be able, and I would be able to continue to drive positive change in that way. It's so important also to have effective communication as a judge, and really knowing the ever evolving issues that affect the court and what the court is facing, even in an everyday basis, even today. These issues are discussed at regular meetings with the judges. And it is so important to keep these in mind and to move forward. A couple of issues that we're facing even today are lack of secure and non-secure detention beds for children. Also, there's a lot of issues with
that's
our assigned
fine.
counsel and their monetary, what they're allowed to monetarily take in from their cases, and we need to get that hourly rate heightened. I know
Thank
it's expected of a judge,
Uh,
and I'd love to be the next family court judge for Ulster County. Thank you.
Thank you. And Renee?
I just want to say thank you. I have been going around meeting with a lot of you at your committees, and it has been a real pleasure. I've really appreciated all of the very thoughtful and intelligent questions that have come my way. I've enjoyed really speaking about my experience, and I hope it's come across that this is something that I'm truly passionate about, and I feel wholeheartedly with my entire being. I'm a very empathetic person. I I feel a lot of the pain and discomfort that people experience when they come into a courtroom, and I want to change that. The system, the process is already traumatic enough. They don't need to worry about a hot-headed judge in addition to it. They don't need to worry about, is their judge going to scream at their lawyer? Is their judge going to just take one look at them and make all sorts of assumptions? I want it to be a place that people feel and know that they are getting a fair shot. And I think that is important now more than ever, to maintain the rule of law, which is unfortunately under assault. I am the one of the 2 town justices at the town of Rochester, which shares some limited concurrent jurisdiction with family court already. Jill DeRiccardi used to be Judge McGinty's law clerk, and I was in a conference with her on a custody matter, and she said something that has really stuck with me. It was very insightful. She said to the parents in the case, she said, you know, we're rooting for your family. And that's kind of my approach. You know, one, we want to be definitely worried about the kids, but it is about the families. And obviously not that they will stay together, but giving them a path forward to make their lives easier, to keep family together, to keep them communicating, because families are the bedrock of community, and that's what we need now.
Thank you. Before I turn it over to Brandon to make a couple of final remarks, I just want to thank our executive committee for pushing to have a bit more discussion with our countywide candidates. There was a request to have candidates make a 2-minute speech at the convention, which our contested race candidates will have that opportunity. But you can see how there's so much at stake in these roles that just 2 minutes or even 2-minute responses, it only begins to scratch the surface, if that. So thank you again to our executive committee for really encouraging us to come together to have a bit more discourse in advance of the convention. And I know on behalf of the executive committee, I just want to encourage everyone who is here and who wishes we had more time to take more time to reach out to each of the candidates, either in a one-on-one fashion or through your committees. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Brandon to close.
Great. Thank you, Barbara. I want to echo what Barbara just said. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for our committee. I also want to thank everyone for being here today. A reminder, recording of this forum will be available till our endorsement vote, which takes place on February 16th at 1 p.m. in the Kingston City Hall. So make sure to attend, make sure to bring your committee members, and make sure they all attend. And that's all I had for you guys today. Hope you enjoy Super Bowl Sunday, and go Chiefs. Bye, everyone.